I just watched a video by a conservative content creator where she argues that all liberal content creators who oppose Trump's mass deportation campaign do so on the basis that mass deportation would lead to a negative impact on the economy due to the deportation of undocumented immigrant workers, where she claims that these unnamed liberal content creators will argue who's going to pick our fruits, who's going to clean our bathrooms or mow our lawns. An argument made on the basis that a lot of industries in this country do heavily rely on undocumented immigrant labor. And so her conclusion is that these liberal content creators, or that the liberal position is not that they actually care about undocumented immigrants being affected by mass deportation, but rather that liberals only care about cheap labor, and she essentially calls this a pro-slavery argument. Now, in her video, she says all liberal content creators. Now, I don't know what content she's consumed and from what so-called liberal content creators she's consumed it from. Based on the content creators that I've seen touch on this topic, it doesn't really seem to ring true. If anything, her video comes off more as a poorly constructed straw man. Because the left-leaning or liberal content creators, if you want to call them that I've seen, focus heavily on the human cost of mass deportation. For example, the separation of mixed status families, the destabilization of communities of which these undocumented immigrants happen to be a part of, as well as the harassment of communities typically associated with immigration. For example, the cases that have arisen of right-wing agitators impersonating ICE agents and then harassing members of the Latino community because they assume them to be undocumented. And the content creators that I've seen who've touched on this are content creators such as Nessa, Señor Barragan, Carlos Eduardo Spina, Che Guerrero, Flower in Spanish, and Ghassan Shahin, just to name a few. And that's not to say that the economic impact of mass deportation doesn't make it into the conversation, because it definitely does. But her contention that it is the main focus of liberal content creators or of liberals in general because they only care about cheap labor is absolutely false. In fact, for a lot of these people, their main focus is the human cost of mass deportation. And when the topic of the economic cost is brought up, it's usually brought up in conjunction because people are able to care about multiple things at once. We can simultaneously care about the economic cost of mass deportation while at the same time being concerned about the impact on communities affected by mass deportation. And thus we can discuss and be concerned over the fact that mixed status families are going to be split up, that this is going to leave some families without security, without knowing whether or not they will or will not be able to meet their daily needs if they lose their breadwinner to mass deportation, while at the same time acknowledging that mass deportation is going to get rid of a lot of undocumented immigrant workers, and thus this will lead to a negative impact in the economy, which will increase our already high and rising cost of living. Concern for the multiple consequences of mass deportation, it's not mutually exclusive. You can be worried about the multiple aspects of mass deportation. And to say that the liberal position only focuses on cheap labor is demonstrably false and intellectually dishonest.